It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I am your host, Natalie Bromley, but joining me as ever is the headliner, the main man himself, the man that makes all the cogs in this preview show wheel turn. It is Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, welcome back.
Hi Natalie, good to be back.
As always, how's your week been? Bit depressing on the Clarets Fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, we need a win, don't we? So let's hope we can get one this Saturday.
Yeah, certainly. I think we were kind of we managed to stay quite upbeat. I think in the main show this week, but I think we were all feeling a little bit. It would have been nice to not have 2 games on the board and no points yet. But to be honest, Leicester away, we were probably not really expecting to get much from. I mean, we've played full strength sides and played some of our best football and still come away from there without getting anything. So I'm not too disheartened with the Leicester result. But Southampton at home is one of those games we can't really afford to give away too many points, are they? But we'll see. Newcastle are flying high though, so we'll have to see where we are. Of course, what have we got this week then, Dave? We are, of course, previewing the 3rd game of the season, our second away fixture, which is Newcastle away. But before we get on to that, young Dave, we have to give some quiz answers out, don't we? Now,
we do.
Last time we spoke to our listeners, we asked them, I can't pronounce this. Is it Ralph
Hasenhüttl, I say, yeah.
Hasenhüttl, I do too. So the quiz question from last week, listeners, was Ralph Hasenhüttl was in charge for Southampton's last 3 visits to Turf Moor, including last weekend. But we wanted to know the names of the other 3 Saints managers Sean Dyche has faced in matches between the 2 teams at Turf Moor. Dave, put us out of our misery. What was the answer?
Oh, you're not going to pronounce these yourself?
No. Don't do that. You know that I really struggle with name pronunciations and I embarrass myself all the time.
Okay, well, the 3 managers were Mauricio Pellegrino, Claude Puel, and Ronald Koeman.
Indeed, I got one of those. I got Pellegrino. Pellegrino. That was the only one I got, and I couldn't get the other 2. So, did we have any correct answers, young Dave?
We just had the one with all 3 correct, and that was John Robertson again.
Oh, always. That's fine. Gets there every week. But come on, listeners, get involved in the quiz. We've been a bit low on quiz entries this week. I think we need to get these out on social media as well to try and elicit some responses out of you. You're all being very lazy with the quiz. Come on, it's a participation show. You're leaving me and Dave out here doing all the work. Come on, listeners. Well, we're going to have another quiz show at the end of the episode, of course. And Dave, we're not going to have any, in future preview shows, we're not going to have any cup games either to do. That's another thing from this week, isn't it? Being dumped out of the cup by City again. That was a bit of a pain last night, wasn't it?
Well, there's still the FA Cup to come later in the season, but we're just hoping we don't get drawn against Manchester City again.
If we do, I'm just going to quit. I'm literally going to quit even caring about cup games. It is getting sick. But then look on the bright side, Dave. We only lost by 3-0 this time, which is an improvement from our usual 5-0.
Well, plus we won. We actually got through 2 rounds this season. We'd only won 1 out of 7 games in the last 6 seasons before this season. So to get 2 wins and then a defeat, that was an improvement. So maybe we can go 1 further next season. It's something to aim for.
That would be very nice. I always worry with the FA Cup because I do want a cup run, but what worries me about the FA Cup is if we haven't quite got a decent amount of points on the board, and we, God forbid, we won't be, but if we're sort of still in the bottom 3 or we're really struggling in January, there's no way that Dyche will put any attention onto the FA Cup because league survival is obviously much more important. So let's hope we can get some results on the board, then we can go for an FA Cup run as well. But that's for another week, Dave. We'll worry about that later. We're not in the cup anymore. We don't care. Concentrating on the league, innit? And that league performance does start with a game on Saturday and Dave has got the right date on my sheet this week. Newcastle away, Saturday the 3rd of October at 8 o'clock, which is live on Sky Sports. Dave, why don't we just jump in there right away and start previewing that game and start with the recent history, please.
Opposition stats.
Yeah, recent history in recent times. So for this season, we're looking at away games we've played. Because we're playing away, looking at games played since 2009-10 season, and our paths haven't met too many times at St James's Park. You may recall that Burnley won the Championship playoff final at Wembley in 2009, and Newcastle United had just been relegated from the Premier League the day before. I actually remember watching their game in a pub in London because I'd travelled down the day before for that. And we have spent quite a few seasons avoiding each other since then. When they went up, we went down, and vice versa. But there have been just the 4 visits up there in the last decade, and Burnley are yet to muster a win from those 4 games, which were all Premier League matches. The one positive we have is we've only lost 1 of those 4, and 3 of them were draws. So perhaps the wise money should be on another draw this Saturday.
Well, a draw's better than a loss, but I'm hoping for a win, Dave. So what about Burnley's last win? And I think from what we can see here, we can put these together with our last top flight win as well, can we?
Yes, it's the same one. As we've already established, we haven't won at Newcastle in the last decade, so we have to go back a little bit further in time to discover our last win and our last top flight win there. And we have to go back to April of 1976, Saturday the 17th of April, in fact. Peter Noble scored the only goal of the game. That was with a header from a corner in the 10th minute. That gave Burnley a 1-0 away win, although, as we know now, that season ultimately ended in relegation from the top flight and a long 33-year wait to get back again. So, as well as being our last away win at Newcastle, it is, of course, our last top flight away win. Hopefully we can kickstart our season with a win and consign that particular stat to a stat dustbin somewhere.
Amen to that, young Dave. Okay, well, moving on to our first new fixture this week then. What is our recent highlight, please?
It's a little bit tricky to pick a highlight when our most recent win at a ground is over 40 years ago. But as well as Burnley's last away victory in 1976, for those of you out there who remember it, there was also a rather eventful match at St James's Park on New Year's Day 2015. Burnley had 1 or 2 injury problems around that time, and the situation got worse when Jason Shackle pulled up just after 17 minutes and had to go off. And Burnley were already trailing to a headed goal from Stephen Taylor at that stage. Kevin Long came on as a substitute to make his Premier League debut. And after we'd drawn level once with a Paul Dummett own goal, it was a crazy header over his own keeper, the home side took the lead again after 26 minutes through Jack Colback got that goal. However, after being on the pitch for just 20 minutes, Kevin Long suffered a knee injury before half-time and had to be replaced. And Sean Dyche also was forced into another first-half substitution when Dean Marney was unable to continue. I'm trying to think off the top of my head when the last time Sean Dyche had to make 3 substitutions in the first 45 minutes of a game. I'd be amazed if there'd been one since then, to be honest. But they were all due to injuries or illness in the first half. The goals continued in the second half. Firstly, we had another equaliser from Danny Ings. And then Moussa Sissoko put Newcastle 3-2 up. And that was still the score with 5 minutes to play, as it looked like the patched-up Burnley team would be coming away from the North East with no points. And at this point, I'm going to stop because I want to save the last part of the story for our hero section, one of our other new sections, which we'll come to shortly, as I don't want to spoil that for everyone.
Ooh, you little tease, Dave. Okay, well, our second then feature then is the low light. What's the downside?
Well, for the low light, I've selected Burnley's only defeat at St James's Park so far this millennium. That was on a Tuesday evening that was late February 2019. After a very disappointing first half of that season, Burnley had been on an excellent run of form since Boxing Day. That Boxing Day defeat against Everton, after that, we went on a run of 9 league matches unbeaten, but it was a disappointing night in the North East as Burnley never recovered from first half goals from Fabian Schär, who scored a wonder goal from 30 yards, you may remember, and also a second from Sean Longstaff. And that 2-0 defeat brought Burnley fans back down to earth with a bump after that 9 match unbeaten run that had gone before.
Oh dear. Okay then, next new feature. Who is our hero?
Yeah, well, we've this is a new feature we've got for this season, the heroes and villains, and going back to that match, continuing on from our match New Year's Day 2015, this week's hero is none other than the goal scorer who scored the equalising goal, George Boyd. Burnley fans may recall the memorable Angel of the North goal celebration. After he'd scored, he ran over to Kieran Trippier near the halfway line, just in front of the dugouts where Sean Dyche was standing. Kieran Trippier lifted up his teammate with his arms outstretched in his best impression of Anthony Gormley's famous steel structure. The sculpture that's such an iconic sight in that part of the world. So for that reason, George Boyd is our hero for this week's preview show.
Excellent. I do miss George Boyd. I liked George Boyd.
Very nice hair.
Very, very nice hair. Very nice hair. And God, you know what? Burnley fans love a runner. Generally speaking, we still love George Boyd. Okay, and then the next new feature, and I do like this. I'm going to put the voice on again, Dave. Are you ready? I've been practicing. Who, Dave, is our villain?
We're going to go back a little bit further in time to select this week.
Hang on a minute. I wanted some feedback on my villain. Come on.
Could do better.
Okay, carry on.
We're going to go back a little bit further in time to select this week's villain, but his selection is purely for his knack of scoring against the Clarets, although to be fair, he was a very prolific all-round goal scorer. So this week's villain is Malcolm McDonald. One particularly notable match involving Malcolm McDonald was played on a neutral venue. He was the player who broke the hearts of Burnley fans in 1974 by scoring both goals in the FA Cup semi-final at Hillsborough. However, less than 2 weeks later, he was also one of Newcastle's goal scorers in the Texaco Cup final. The Magpies eventually won that game 2-1 in extra time with a Bobby Moncur goal. Malcolm McDonald had scored the other goal earlier in the game.
There you go. Were you at that game, Dave?
In my nappy, no.
See, I'll get you one day. Next new feature then, please, Dave. Who is our one to watch?
Right, well, first the good news before we do go on to this week's one to watch. Our one to watch selection for last week was Southampton's Che Adams, and the good news was he didn't score last weekend. However, however, he did provide the assist for Danny Ings to score the only goal of the game.
And it was a ridiculous pass as well, and it's probably never going to do that again for the rest of the season. So you are definitely. I'm going to bin this feature before long. You've got what? This is your last chance, Dave. I swear, last chance.
Okay, well, this week I've resisted the temptation to choose Jeff Hendrick, and I've gone instead for Alan Saint-Maximin, if I've pronounced that correctly. Some Burnley fans may have got a close-up look at him before he even signed for Newcastle, as he was in the Nice team, which lost 6-1 at Turf Moor in a pre-season game at the end of July 2019. He also scored their goal that night and looked like an exciting prospect with his willingness to run with the ball. Last season, he made 26 appearances in the Premier League. 3 of those were as substitute, and he scored 3 goals and was credited with 4 assists. Only 2 other players, that's Adama Traore for Wolves and also Wilfred Zaha, accumulated more take-ons during last season, and that's despite him only playing 26 times. As a whole, Newcastle were perhaps lacking in creativity in 2019-20, but Saint-Maximin is one player who looks capable of creating a chance or making an incisive run. So Burnley will need to keep a close eye on him if he's past fit to play. He did suffer a minor ankle injury and was unavailable last weekend, but he is back in training. He may be considered for this weekend's match, although he wasn't used in their midweek Carabao Cup game. I did hear a report from Steve Bruce's pre-match conference, and it did sound like he was going to be certainly involved on Saturday.
Well, let's keep an eye on that one, and let's see what damages to our side, and we'll decide next week whether this feature remains, Dave.
Can it?
Definitely. Finally, then, before we move on to other matters, who's the referee, please?
We've got David Coote. He's in charge of this weekend's match at St James's Park on Saturday evening. He's refereed 9 previous matches involving Burnley, and the Clarets have lost just one of those. That was the 4-2 defeat we had at Fulham near the start of the 2018-19 season. The other 8 matches he's been in charge of have resulted in 4 wins and 4 draws for Burnley, and he's yet to send off any players, home or away, in any of his previous Burnley matches. During the last campaign, he was the man in the middle at Anfield for our 1-1 draw against Liverpool, and we also saw him once at Turf Moor earlier in the season. That was for the 2-0 win against Norwich City. His eyes and ears at Stockley Park will be Paul Tierney. He's been appointed as the video assistant referee for Saturday.
Excellent. Now, we're not going to leave it there, Dave. No, because we know you and we know how you like to spoil our listeners. So why don't you delve into that deep bank of your lovely stats and give our listeners your miscellaneous stat of the week.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Right, well, I couldn't find a really interesting one about Newcastle for this week, so I've stolen someone else's. This week's stat is one that Bill Edgar in the Times mentioned earlier in the week, but I'm going to highlight it again for any listeners who didn't see it. The Football League, as we know, began in 1888, and since then there have been 199,972 matches. By Saturday lunchtime, 3 more games with a Friday evening or early Saturday kickoff will have taken this tally up to 199,975. There are 32 games with a Saturday 3 p.m. kickoff, which means that before Burnley play Newcastle, this total will have passed the magic 200,000 milestone. Burnley have played 4,944 league games so far, and the club will pass the 5,000 mark sometime during next season. Only one other club has played more than 5,000 league games in England, and that's fellow founder members Preston North End, who played their 5,000th league game late last season. Another founder member club and former league club, Notts County, who are currently playing non-league football at National League level, are the only other club to have played more league games than Burnley, although they'll need to win promotion again to start adding to their tally of 4,986 again.
Wow, that is a good stat, and it's quite proud as well, because when you look at that and you go, like, Preston got there before us, and you just think, gosh, our success...
Only because they never got promoted to the Premier League.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like, our success in the Premier League has meant we've fallen behind. It's like, it just makes you realise, doesn't it, what we've achieved, in addition to what some of our peers across Lancashire are doing as well. It's really good. That was a good stat. I liked that. So taking all of those stats aside, Dave, how are you feeling about the game? What's your gut telling you about what we'll do?
It's difficult, isn't it? I know we don't have a brilliant record up at Newcastle. We haven't won there for a long time, although we haven't played that many games. We have got draws in other games, so my tendency is to think, well, wins are really good away from home. If we can get a win, that would be fantastic, and we are capable of getting a win. But if I'm thinking with my head rather than my heart, I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to predict a 1-1 draw for Saturday.
Interesting. I think we're going to win. I don't think we've played too badly. I'm a bit worried about defence, but if Tarky's back playing in the league on Saturday, I think that's going to give us a bit of a boost. I'm not entirely sure as how much longer we can have Long and Jimmy Dunn as our centre half partner, and not being nasty to the pair of them. They've tried their best, but there's some inexperience there, and I think either one of them needs one of either me or Tarky alongside them to be able to cover them. I think together they're just a little bit lighter than we would like. So I think having Tarky back, I think we shouldn't be shipping loads of goals, I don't think. So I'm gonna be confident. I think we're gonna score. I think Wood's looking really, really good, and if we can just try and get some passes to him and try and not let McNeil be marked out of the game and try and get some through balls to him, I think we'll score. So I'm going to say 2-1 to Burnley. I think that would be good. And of course, I think it all depends as well if we get any. I don't think there's any other players due to come back at the weekend, is there, Dave? I haven't seen it. I think there's only Tarky.
Well, obviously Ashley Barnes came back and played in the midweek game. He played an hour or so, didn't he, in that before being substituted. So he'll. I'm not sure he'll start the game, but he'll certainly be available from the bench, I would imagine.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, no, I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be fine. Let us know what you think, listeners. If obviously you're not travelling to the games, we need to wish anybody Godspeed or anything like that at the weekend because we're all still stuck away from the grounds. But hopefully you are listening to this as part of your pre-match build-up anyway. Tweet us your predictions at No Nay Never or drop us an email at podcast@nonenever.net and let us know how you think the Clarets will get on.
Opposition View.
So this week, our opposition view comes from the Talk of the Toon podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by Hodge and Will. Gentlemen, welcome to the No Nay Never podcast.
Hi, Matt. Right. Thanks very much.
Just going to go straight in there, I think, and rip off that Band-Aid and talk about all the takeover malarkey that has been going on off the field for you guys over the last few months.
Do we have to?
Do you want to just kind of... in no more than so many words, just give us your feelings and what you thought the general feeling from the Toon Army was of that.
Right. Well, I think the overriding feeling is like our hearts have just been ripped out of our chests. Not that we're dramatic or anything. I think the signs were always there from the start that it was going to be a tricky process. And I think collectively speaking, I think we're pretty devastated with the outcome. I mean, to be told at one stage you're going to be the richest football club in the world, and then to find out that you're going to be stuck with Mike Ashley for the foreseeable future is, it's pretty devastating. We thought the 13 or 14 years of Mike Ashley and him ruining our football club were over, but evidently not. There's obviously still the proceedings going on were led to believe. I think there's this appeals being launched to the Premier League, or we've started legal proceedings, but that's all a bit murky. I think the overall feeling is just absolute deflation. But Hodge, I don't know if you had more thoughts.
Well, it looks like we're about to go through it again, isn't it, with Nova Group coming back? So
no, I think
it's just an absolute rollercoaster journey being a Newcastle fan all the time. So tiring, I think, is one word I would use.
It's like the carrot's being dangled in front of your faces and being lashed away, and forget about the carrot. The carrot never happened. Here's the stick. But I think they've tried to distract us a little bit with a few big name signings. So obviously we've brought in Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser, Jeff Hendrick, your lad, over the summer. I don't know whether that's like distraction tactics or what, but yeah, it's very disappointing.
So is the feeling that anything would be better than Ashley then, even with all the kind of the moral arguments behind the Saudi group and all that? Do people just... Is it literally anything but Ashley at the minute?
As long as the owner's not a Mackham, I think we'll be all
right. Anything would be better than Mackham. It's a tough one because obviously you make a good point. There are the moral arguments around the ownership and the involvement of the Saudi royal family. We're led to believe that the public investment funds, the PIF, which I think is headed up by Mohammed bin Salman, who's the crown prince, it is a separate entity to the Saudi royal family, and we're led to believe that it's a completely separate entity. But I'm not sure that's really held up with Richard Masters and the Premier League when it's come down to it. But yeah, we don't know. Hodgie talks about this Nova group who kind of they're making all these big splashes on social media, but we don't know how much substance there is to their claims that they're trying to take over the football club, Singaporean-based business. But yeah, I think anything would be better than Ashley at the minute.
You talked on about the transfers that did come in for you during the short close season. Were you happy with that activity? Are you happy with the names that he's brought in? And how have they performed for you so far in these first handful of games?
I'm pretty happy with Callum Wilson. I think to get someone who's actually got a bit of a proven record in goal scoring's a massive help for us because our £40 million Joelinton hasn't really returned.
Never started.
Returned at all. Yeah, to be fair. And I think pairing him up with someone like Ryan Fraser, who is a free agent, I think was really good. Obviously, they've played together, so they've got a bit of history there, which helps. Obviously, Jeff Hendrick coming from you guys on a free.
We've brought in Jamal Lewis.
I think he's
a
very solid player. Yeah, Jamal Lewis. He was 15 mil, wasn't he? I think he's got a bit of a bright future in football. I think. And then we've got this Rodrigo Vilca.
This Peruvian kid.
Apparently, he's going to be the next best thing. Hopefully, he becomes another Nobby Solano.
How many times have been told that though? Next best thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I think overall, the feeling is that we're quite pleased with transfer activity. We've brought in some proven experience, Premier League experience. Importantly, obviously, Jeff Hendricks, Irish international, Callum Wilson, England international, or was briefly. Ryan Fraser, Scottish international. Lewis is a Northern Ireland international. All with Premier League experience, which is kind of unheard of for us. We usually dip into the French market and buy players you've never even heard of before. So it's nice to have some familiar names on the roster this year.
Got a net spend of 34.5 million this year.
Just unheard of for us.
And the start to the season has been a bit mixed for you. Obviously, you had a good start away at West Ham, and then we'll gloss over maybe the defeat at home to Brighton. But you've got some exploits in the cup to balance that out as well, with a quarter final coming up. Although a long way away at Christmas time now. So generally, are we happy with where we are? Would we like to? Do we think we should have had more points on the board by now? And did you expect to go this far in the cup?
Well, I don't think you ever expect to be smacked 3-0 at home by Brighton. So that was really disappointing. But it's also kind of started a lot of alarm bells. So West Ham was quite a convincing performance, but probably more so because West Ham were fairly poor on the day. Everything else since that has been a bit rubbish, to be honest. We just never looked threatening at all. I think since West Ham, we've had one shot on target or something, Hodge. You have to remind me, one shot on target, and I think it was Callum Wilson's penalty in the 95th minute against Tottenham. Yeah. We've brought in a striker, but we're not giving him any service at the minute, which is really annoying. And I think there's a bit of disillusionment to Steve Bruce's style of play and the way he sets up. Now it's, the fears are starting to creep in quite quickly.
Bit of Bruce ball. It's one way and one way only. It doesn't really change. I think that where you touched on Brighton game before, like we just had no direction really with the Brighton game. We were set up exactly the same way we did at West Ham, but you can't do that for two Premier League sides in a row. They'll pick your holes like what Graham Potter did. Just got that Lamptey young lad to just run it ASM because you can't defend.
Can't defend to save his life. It's tough. Hodgie cracked me up the other day when we were watching the Morecambe. No, it was the Blackburn game, wasn't it, Hodge? We've gone from playing Bruce-Alona to Bruce Ball within a matter of a week, and it's quite a stark difference. So yeah, it's really disappointing. Getting off to a really promising start. We're Newcastle fans, so as soon as you win, you think you're going to win the league, win the cup, we're going to be in the Champions League next year. And then the week after, we're all thinking we're going to be relegated. So it's a mix of emotions so far.
Do the fans warmed to Bruce? Because obviously he's got the history with the other side and things, but he's been there. He's had a reasonable length of time for a Premier League manager now. Do people support him, or would people rather see him out the door? How's his stock at the minute amongst fans?
It's gone pretty roller coaster ride to him as well, to be fair. It's at the start, I think some people were like, okay, it's the best we've kind of got. We're not really going to attract anyone else. Let's see how he does after 10 games. After 10 games, everyone was still like, And then obviously we managed to stay up, which I think was a good achievement for him, to be fair, to get us to 13th. But I would love to see him go now. I don't particularly get on with his tactics, how he is. I think he's just a really likeable bloke in the changing room, but I don't think anyone actually fights for him, if that makes sense. Will, I'm sure you've got a different opinion, maybe.
Oh, no. Very much the same. I think you have to kind of caveat everything with the fact that, in my opinion, Newcastle fans are probably the most fickle fans in the league. I don't know if that's contentious or offensive to say, but, we'll go 1 week, as I say, thinking he's the best manager ever when he gets a 2-0 win against West Ham. And then the week after, he's the worst manager in the league. I think he's had to work quite hard to win some fans on side, because remember, obviously, he was Sunderland manager for quite a long time. His record in the league's not been the best by any stretch. But yeah, Hodgie said he's a likable bloke. Like, he's a local lad. He's a Newcastle fan. So you almost kind of want it to work for him, but it's not quite happening on the pitch as of late. I mean, we just about scraped through against League Two Newport in the Carabao Cup, and have a feeling that we're going to get absolutely smacked by Brentford in the next round. So it's that kind of sums it up. If you're thinking that you're going to be smacked against Championship side Brentford, it kind of gives you it's just my opinion and my thoughts, but it kind of gives you an insight into what we're thinking.
How safe do you think his position is? I mean, how quickly do you think Ashley would pull that trigger? And do you think any kind of pending takeover would buy him more time or less time? Or, do you expect him to last the whole season?
I think if we were taken over tomorrow, he'd be gone in the same day, personally. He's just not like an aspirational manager. He's not going out to be the most exciting team in the league. You think, hark back to like quite recently. Not even, I'll go for a different point. If we hark back to like Kevin Keegan. Kevin Keegan's an absolute legend in Newcastle United because he played exciting football. Bobby Robson played exciting football. He got results. We ended up in the Champions League with Bobby Robson. You just can't see it happening with, the only thing they all share in common is grey hair, unfortunately. You just can't see it happening with Bruce at all. He's not playing. He's probably playing for mid-table. He's not playing for top half.
He's just literally trying to keep us safe. I think that's all he can do in his powers. I think, just finishing above that red line.
But yeah, so Matt, to answer your question, I think he's very much a Mike Ashley signing. He's a Mike Ashley man. So he's the face to Mike Ashley's operation at Newcastle United, much like Alan Pardew was. I don't think his days would be numbered if anyone else came in.
So looking ahead to Saturday evening's match against Burnley, it's not been the most particularly exciting matchups in the last couple of seasons. How do you see this one going? Do you think another goal fest that we've seen in the Premier League over the last couple of weekends is on the way, or do you think this could be one of the rare 0-0s of this season?
Well, as usual, I'm a huge optimist, so I think it's going to be 5-0 to Newcastle. But Hodge will have a different opinion.
I think the last previous meetings have been 0-0, 1-0 to Burnley, 2-0 to Newcastle. I think that's the last three games. I can just see another draw, a stalemate at 1-1 or 2-2. To be totally honest, I've lost all care about Newcastle recently with results. I'm just so pessimistic.
It's
right
hard
now,
to watch.
The Bruce effect. It's so
it's really hard to watch.
And I think you guys will be way more organised than what we will. So
it's
going to be. I think it'll be an interesting game for people to watch, maybe. But I'm going to be hiding behind a cushion. I know.
Yeah, I don't personally know too much about Daich and his tactics, but he seems to have you guys playing in a really organised fashion. I think you seem to have a really good core of players that you kind of build around, like the Ben Mees, Tarkowskis. You've got Chris Wood up front as well, who seems to be doing quite well so far this season. I just don't know how Jamal Lascelles and Fernandez will be facing up against someone like him. What do you reckon?
We've been ravaged by injuries during towards the end of Project Lockdown and even the start of this season. We've had to kind of piece together a side, but we have got players on the way back in. Tarkowski's magical toe injury, which there's some people here that were sceptical whether he was actually.
He's off to Leicester.
Well, that seems to have gone now. Actually, just before, I think it was on Wednesday in the run up to the City game, there was kind of pretty much strong reports coming out that they weren't going to go any higher. They weren't going to meet what he wanted. They'd turn their attention to somebody else. And then he played against City on Wednesday night, did the whole 90 minutes. So that's kind of, for me, an indication that they put that to bed for this window at least. We've got Ashley Barnes back now from injury. He played against City again on Wednesday night. It was first senior match since New Year's Day. So I expect him and Wood maybe to start up front on Saturday because Jay Rodriguez is out injured at the minute. He won't be back until after the international break. Ben Mee is probably still out until I think he's touch and go for this weekend. So we'll have Tarkowski and Kevin Long at centre back. So not our usual first choice 11 going out there. But you're right. He does keep them organised. It's how we play. We set up. Everyone knows their job. It's just always a question of how well they do that job. Last week against Southampton was a bit poor in places. There was people not necessarily doing what we know they're capable of. Dale Stevens came in and made his debut, and it was kind of a debut to forget, really. You know, some people were asking if he was still in Brighton. So yeah, but then, you know, the performance against Leicester in our first match, even though we lost, people were quite happy with the actual performance we put in. So yeah, I think it's going to be. I don't know which way it's going to go. Whether it's going to be another ball fest or whether it's going to be a goal fest. You can kind of toss a coin at the minute, really, in the way things are, and in empty stadiums, you're not quite sure what kind of match you're going to get.
Am I right in thinking that Dale Stephens is your only real first team signing in this window?
Absolutely right. We signed a third choice goalkeeper
From
Will
Wolves,
Norris,
wasn't he?
from Wolves, but he's definitely third choice. But yes, we're currently being linked with Harry Wilson from Liverpool. Apparently, we've put in a bid, which shock horror to Burnley, is probably a bit below what Liverpool want for him.
Was that
He played last night as a permanent signing. Yeah. We put in, I think, 12 million plus 4 million of add-ons, and I think they were wanting a bit more than that. He played last night in the Cup, which some people thought was a sign that he maybe wasn't leaving, but then other people were saying, well, you know, they're probably putting him out there and putting him in the shop window and trying to attract a bit more, you know, a bit of a bid off and things over this weekend. So that is really, I think, the only serious name left. Anything else is people like Craig Dawson, Cook from Bournemouth, kind of aging centre-backs to just come in and be a bit of cover for us, really. But yeah, I think if we got Wilson over the line, I think it'd be an exciting signing. It's a position that we're desperate for. Our wingers, Goodmunson got injured in the Cup, Brady got injured. So they are on the way back, but we are desperately short of cover on the wing. So that one would be great. But no, it's not been a great transfer window. But there's strong rumours of us getting taken over by an American consortium. So the owners are probably reluctant to go out and splash out millions at a time when they're trying to sell the club. And you know, Dyche is still pulling reasonable performances out of this skeleton squad. I think if we were getting battered every week, they might be a bit more willing to kind of get the checkbook out. But they've always been cautious with the finances. They've just been ultra cautious in the last 6 months with no gate receipts coming in. So we'll see. We'll see what this weekend brings. See what happens once the window's shut where we are. But I think most people are kind of confident that we've got enough to be better than 3 or 4 other teams in the league. You know, it's kind of the approach that some Burnley fans take.
That's what you aspire for.
Are we better than West Ham? You know, maybe Leeds if they go off the boil.
Newcastle.
Well, Newcastle don't necessarily get mentioned as much. But yeah, you only have to be better than 3 other teams to survive. And survival with no gate receipts this season, it just seems to be even more important, I think, than it has been in the past.
Yeah. Yes, good point.
So finally, we give you opportunity to plug your podcast, tell people where they can find you if they're interested in following you and keeping up to you with your opinions on everything black and white.
So you can find us on Facebook by searching for Talk of the Toon Podcast, or you can find us on Twitter at TOTT Podcast. We've not posted for a while, unfortunately, obviously with the down season and what's been going on. I'm actually based in London. Hodgie and Gray, the other 2 lads, are based up in Newcastle, so we've got to do everything virtually at the minute. But we're looking to get back into it now that the season's back up and running.
Well, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen, and let's hope for a good match on Saturday evening.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Best of luck.
Yeah, best of luck.
Cheers.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Moving on, young Dave, we have a small matter of game week 3 of the much coveted and much loved known and ever Fantasy Premier League. Dave, talk us through the movers and shakers, please.
Yeah, we do have some moves and shakers in the top 5. As we expect in the early stage of the season, you do get quite a bit of movement around. It does take a little time to settle down. But in terms of the top 5 managers we've got a climber up to number 1. Matthew Blackburn is our current leader with 214 points. He got 61 in the last game week. Daniel Mellor is in second place on 208. They're actually joint second. It must be on base of last week's score. He's gone into second place. Also is Ursay on 208 points. We've got Charlie Binns in fourth place on 204, and Dale Warrington's in fifth place on 195. So they're the early leaders, but we expect that to change as things settle down in the first, maybe month or so, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would agree. I have also been trying to keep an eye on some Team No Nay Never places to see what's going on. And also, if you remember last week, we were trying to figure out where our reigning champion Bennett Howarth is as well. I can tell you that young Bennett is in 82nd spot at the moment with 163 points. The current No Nay Never team, Richard Steele, is in 60th. He's our highest team at the moment. He's in 60th with 160.
He won last season as well, didn't he? He was the highest of our
he was
podcasters.
Yeah, he's a bit better than us. So our current team, Richard, is at 60th place with 168 points. Producer Matt's in 86 with 162 points. Tom is in 138th with 146 points.
And then we don't have to go any further, do we?
Well, George is there. George is in 170th with 139 points. And Dave, you are in 203rd with 126 points. I am now in, and I managed to score 34 points last week. For
240th out of 240.
You know, Dave, we didn't need to go there. Our listeners didn't need to know that. They just needed to know that I was in and that I scored points. It's fine. Sigh. I've also spotted this week a few ex-No Nay Never team as well, some of our previous team members who are still in our league. So I wanted just to give them a quick shout out and see where they are. Jamie Smith, our old host Jamie, who was obviously one of the founder members of the No Nay Never team, is in 117th with 153. Other founder members, Adam Howarth and James Bird, are in 163rd and 180th. With 140 and 137 points respectively. And Gemma Avery, who you'll remember joined us a couple of seasons ago to help with our reporting and coverage of Burnley women, which we do hope to get back to at some point this season, is in 183rd with 136 points. So there you go. That's going to be my contribution to the to the Fantasy League, and we'll try and keep an eye on Team No Nay Never and see how we're doing. Right, where are we up to next? I've lost my place in my script.
Team of the week.
Yes, team of the week. Thank you. I got myself all lost then, looking at too many spreadsheets in front of me. Team of the week. What happens there?
Well, there were no Burnley players in the team of the week following Saturday's defeat to Southampton. That's perhaps not a surprise to anyone. But there were no Saints players in there either. The highest scoring player overall for the week was Jamie Vardy. He picked up 17 points, and he's also the highest scoring player for the season to date. He's up to 32 points so far. And when we look at Burnley players on their own, obviously they've only played 2 games, whereas most teams have played 3. But Jimmy Dunn and Chris Wood are the highest scoring Burnley players so far. They've got 8 points each.
Excellent. So, in summary, young Dave, I think we've closed it now, haven't we? Have we?
I haven't officially yet. So, if I give you a quick, you can still join the league and challenge our reigning champion, Bennett Howarth, as we've mentioned. If anyone wants the code, it is G3QK0F. So that's Golf, number 3, Quebec, Kilo, number 0, Foxtrot.
I do think we're going to have to close it though soon, Dave. It's getting to game week 4 now. I don't think we're going to get any more entries. I think we need to. When's the cut-off for entering game week 4? Is it 11 o'clock on Saturday morning?
It'll be sometime on Saturday morning, depending on what time they kick off.
As soon as the entries for game week 4,
I'll shut it.
Shut it. Yeah. Slam it shut. That door's gone. And this time next week, when we report on this, Dave, I'm not going to be in last place because I'm getting this now. I'm not massively understanding it, but I feel like I'm changing my team and I'm making them substitutions and I'm doing stuff. So I'm going to finish higher than you this season, Dave.
We'll see.
Mark my words.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
Let us finish off this week's podcast then, Dave, with a quiz question. What are you setting our listeners this week for their homework, please?
Right, well, this goes back to the match that we'd mentioned earlier in the show, the one which was took place at Newcastle United on New Year's Day 2015. And what we want to know is, can you list the names of the Burnley players among our matchday squad of 18 who are still on the playing staff at the club today?
So it's over 5 years ago. Can you list the names of the Burnley players among the matchday squad of 18 who were named for the 3-3 draw at Newcastle United on New Year's Day 2015, who are still on the playing staff at the club today? So essentially what you're saying is that there are some players who played in 2015 who are still
at the club, yes.
Players? Can we have a clue? Are they players or have they moved into...
Only players. Only players. Players who are still on the playing staff.
How many of them are there?
I'm not going to say that because that might give it away. But we've mentioned there is at least one. We've mentioned one of them already in the piece that we did. If you want to go back and listen to that, so
I can think of one.
Probably because I mentioned it earlier and you were paying attention, weren't you?
Listening. No, I don't listen. I do listen, Dave. Of course I do. I pay lots of attention to what you're saying. Well, moving on, why don't you tell our listeners how they submit their answers, please?
They can get in touch with us in the usual way. That's to tweet us or send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at NoNayNever. Email us, podcast@noNayNever.net, or we'll be posting a post on the No Nay Never Facebook page, and you can reply to that as well.
Excellent. And do join us with this quiz, because it's no good me trying to answer them every week because I never get them right. So, send us your answers. Get involved. And that's all we've got time for, I think, Dave. I can't think we've got anything else to talk about this week. So shall we bid our listeners farewell and send them on their merry way? As ever, our thanks go to producer Matt for editing all of this together and publishing it out there. My main thanks, of course, go to Dave, who is just puts a ridiculous amount of effort and time into this podcast, and we love it very much, Dave, and your enthusiasm is infectious, so thank you very much. But as ever, my main thanks go to you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this episode. As I mentioned last week, we had the very exciting news that our listener figures for the preview show have doubled from last season. And they increased again at the weekend. So we got even more listeners joined us this weekend, which is just really, really exciting times. The preview show's really taken off, and it is all down completely to the hard work of Dave. So I'm really pleased that you guys are tuning in and listening along with us. It makes our job so much easier. We'll be back with the full show on Tuesday, I think, where we will be lamenting the exit from the Carabao Cup and basically not wanting to play City ever again. We will be looking back at this weekend's game over Newcastle and hopefully talking about lots of goals and lots of points. And then Dave and I will be back next weekend for the preview show next Friday, won't we?
No, we won't. No, we won't, because there's the international break, isn't there? So
I thought that was the week after. There you go.
Don't play again till West Brom, so we've got the international break in between.
We do. Okay, well, in that case then, me and Dave won't be with you next Friday. You're going to have your weekends on your own without us. But do keep an eye out, because as we announced in the main show during the week, we have got a very special podcast with Radio 1 DJ and Burnley fan Jordan North to come in the international break. So we will get that instead. It won't be anywhere near as good as listening to me and Dave do the previous show. But, we've got to keep your interest going. So take care in the meantime. I hope you're all staying safe. I hope you're all wearing your masks. And I hope you're all looking after one another and trying to get through this pandemic until we all meet again at Turf Moor. Take care. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.